In the end, our goal is not to fall in love with the technology. I think it is to look at the affordances. And my sort of big final push here is around affordances, meaning that as HR professionals, as organizational development professionals, technology is going to be a part of our world. It's going to be a part of our employees' world. I got called in to testify on a really awkward case. Somebody was working as a teleworker for 3 companies at once, bringing in 3 salaries, and had excellent performance reviews for all 3. Had actually hired on their own dollar an assistant to help them perform with the 3 companies. The only way they got caught was the tax department wondered how they could have 3 full-time jobs at once. It wasn't illegal, they were just really curious, so they reached out to see if it was a clerical error in that process. And it's triggered a whole interesting thing of, what does your employment contract say for a teleworker? Do you have all their time, some of their time? Are they allowed to do other things? Can they outsource some of their jobs to other people and the like? But it's not going to be about the technology. It's when a new technology comes out to think about affordances. Now, what do we mean by affordance? It doesn't mean can we afford it monetarily. It means, what does this piece of technology afford me as the employee, or we as the organization, that it couldn't do as well beforehand? So what does it allow me to do that we couldn't do as well beforehand? Now, in some instances, it takes years before we understand the affordances. In some instances, the change happens and we haven't even recognized it. Let me give you an example. At the count of 3, I'd like you to say out loud in unison, and I will not record it, the telephone number of your first telephone number, if you can remember back. So on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Lorraine 8, 7276. I grew up in New York. We started with names back then. Now, 5 years ago, I was the go-to telephone person in my organization. I will tell you that the pizza parlor that has really good pepperoni pizza is 474-6366. You know, most of you 5 years ago knew a lot of phone numbers. How many phone numbers do you now know by heart? No, what you've done is you have transferred your phone numbers. Let me give you a phrase to it. You've created a GPS. You've created a personal GPS. So now, when I need to call somebody, I just look up Harvey's number and I press Harvey. Now, the problem that I have, this is where we start to get ahead of the technology. I want the ability to point my cell phone at a landline and have it dial. Because nothing is more awkward than having the phone here and dialing with your elbow over there. But one of the things that we are actively predicting that's going to happen is the growth of a workplace GPS. A workplace GPS. So let's think about GPSs for a moment. What does a GPS allow us to do that we couldn't do before? Anyone? Just real quick. What can a GPS in our car allow us to do that we couldn't do before? Okay, so a couple things. First one Ken said is it tells me where I am. It gives me a sense of location and presence now. What else does it allow me to do? Okay, what? It gives me multiple routes to the same element, including in my GPS, it even is linked now into traffic reports, so I know when it kind of goes somewhere. What else does it allow me to do? Any? Don't have to plan. It's kind of an instant. I don't have to use brain cells on that. 2 other things it allows me to do. Go ahead. Shows me good stuff along the way, shortest route, and it allows me to fail without consequences. I'm serious. Now, there's that voice that, at the next available time, please turn around. But what's really interesting, wonderful research done by Professor Paul G. at University of Arizona about the ability to fail forward. I would argue that most things that I've learned that are important, I failed my way into them. I did not learn how to become a speaker until, I had a couple of failings along the way. I did not learn how to manage a company until one of my companies almost went bankrupt. In other words, fail forward. What the GPS gives me the ability to do, I can take a route, and if I get lost, I can get unlost. We haven't even begun to do it, but the GPS can also be used as a feedback data mining thing for you. So there's one of the insurance companies in the United States now that if you're willing to link from you to your GPS to them, they will give you a differential rate based on how quickly you leave lights and how rapidly you decelerate at braking. So the deal is, I'll lower your insurance, but we want to data mine your driving. But forget that, I could data mine it for myself. So what are some of the interesting places I've been to? Or show me on the GPS something I've never been to before. So what's really interesting about the GPS is not its technology, is its affordances. So why do I have it up here? Because if I were looking at a trend that I could share with you and hopefully come back in 3 years or 5 years and you would say, wow, Elliott kind of tipped me off to this and it's sort of happened. I'm going to predict that in the next 3 to 5 years, you are going to build workplace GPSs for your employees. And what they are going to be, and I don't care what technology they might be. They might be in a tablet, they might be embedded into a cash register. So Yum Brand Foods that owns KFC and Pizza Hut and the like, they're building a GPS into their point-of-sale cash register. And it'll know, am I a manager, am I a new hire, and the like. And all day long, as I'm doing stuff on the left side, on the right side will be GPS functionality. So as I'm going to pack the bag, it'll show me an ideal way to pack the bag. I could ignore it, but the opportunity is to have just-in-time information and knowledge. But GPS doesn't have to be automated. Because in São Paulo, Brazil, the owner of McDonald's decided to break with McDonald's traditional model and open up kiosks that only sell no hamburgers, they just sell Fritz, French fries, soda, and ice cream. One person in a little kiosk. What do they do when they get into trouble? Their GPS includes a video link to all the other kiosks around São Paulo. So they're going to have their own knowledge network that's running there. So the GPS could be press here for the documentation that we never go to. The GPS could be, here's something that somebody like me found yesterday. The GPS could be, here's some feedback on how I'm a new manager. So imagine for this, if you were going to do a GPS for new managers, people that are going to become leaders, once again, with your partner, it'll be the last activity I'll ask you to do. What would you build into their GPS? What would you give them that would help them become and grow as a manager or as a leader in an organization? So just talk to your partner for a second, and we will collect that. We'll be done in 5 minutes. Do you want me to give this to you again? Do you want me to hand this to you when I'm done at the end of 5 minutes, or just, so I'll do that. Okay, if I could, any images of what would be on a leadership GPS? what would you put onto your leadership GPS?